everyone. So nice to see you guys today. I'm a big holistic advocate. I believe in really, trying to get into your body and understanding that everything we do as far as health is involved as a tool, but you actually are all the magic. My background, just to show you guys, I was a big biology nerd back in undergrad. I wasn't sure if I was going to go into medicine or into science, and my dad, who's actually here today, can attest to that. I gave a talk my senior year and how cool the genes were in the cells, and so I'm very privileged and blessed to be standing here today really combining the two aspects of medicine, because one of the hard parts of medicine in general, doctors' offices, is they go into med school and they learn all these diagnostic tools and how to treat patients, but we lose the science. We lose how to implement some of these really cool things that are going on now in real life. And I feel like I get to really play such a cool part in the cutting edge of things, because we take what science is teaching us, but then we can talk to you guys about it and really combine these two things, and we're not confined by the restraints of insurance, right? So there are some things that insurance can cover, but there's other things that we can offer you guys and say, these go really well together, but the whole burden is not just on you to pay for it all together. Some of it can get covered, but we want you guys to know that there's more than just what your doctor has available. Then I went on to Emory University for PA school. I was part of an anesthesia program there, where I specifically worked as a PA in anesthesia. So my job was to help put you to sleep during surgery, and I would do between 4 to 6 cases a day for 8 years. And what this really taught me was that right before everybody's put to sleep is one of the scariest moments of anyone's life. And I'm sure how many of you have been put to sleep and can say that for a fact, right? What I didn't love about it was that it didn't feel that way for me, because I felt like an airplane pilot just flying everybody around all the time. And I loved taking a moment with every patient as they laid on the table and really looking them in their eyes, rubbing their head and calming them down. And I felt like that part of medicine is what's missing, right? That part of compassion and love and care is what's missing in our day-to-day life or in medicine when someone's really terrified, right? And that's why I believe in a company like VitalX, because they're giving you that one-on-one care. You're not a number here. You're not just someone that shows up and we're trying to get you in and out, because so many doctors' offices are like that. We want to make sure that you are seen and heard for your issues and your ailments, and we can provide a really high-end service for you, and really listen to what's going on, because everyone's different. So went on and did that, and then I was part of I ended up getting to work in a COVID ICU, which was lots of fun, but it taught me a lot. I worked night shift. I had 2 kids, and so no one wanted to watch my kids, right? So I had to somehow find a schedule that worked where I could be up with them during the day and go to work at night. And the way the hospital provided care for us was not at all what I would say made me want to stay in that world. So after that, I exited, and I was like, you know what, there's a better way to practice medicine. There's a much better way to reach people, still help them with their health, but I can utilize these tools I learned over the last 8 years and help companies like VitalX and people get better. And so that's kind of where we landed now. So fast forward almost 5 years, and that's where I'm at. I have 2 older kids, remarried, and 1 on the way, obviously. So I'm a big believer, though, in a lot of self-centering practices. So wellness is beyond just what we take. It's beyond what doctors prescribe for us. So much of it about it is positive self-talk. It's understanding that we have the tools, that we are part of the process. So mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and physical. So how we physically feel, obviously, is almost something that we talk mentally to ourselves. So how many of you start the morning with positive affirmations? Just a few. Okay. Highly suggest it. There's free Spotify playlists that you can, just turn on even while you're brushing your teeth. 5 minutes, 10 minutes every morning of just saying, I am worthy, today's gonna be a great day. I am wonderful, I am here for a reason, can really help your body, and it's been proven. You're actually able to train the cells in your body to heal itself by just mentally talking to yourself. So I believe that's a huge part. Emotionally, why I bring this up is emotions are okay. We always are like, I shouldn't be emotional, I'm not allowed to be angry, I'm not allowed to be sad, and I just don't think that's true. Actually suppressing them is not what we should do. So if we're angry or we're sad, we let it out, and I just literally shake it out. Like, so much of it is stored in our hips, and I have like a shake plate I'll stand on like once a day, shakes everything up. That is really good. So that's why dancing or just kind of moving in your body, like even if it's in the shower and you're by yourself, highly suggest that too. So that's a good way to kind of get the emotional out. I also have hosted breathwork classes where we just scream, because that feels really good too. So don't ever feel sad about if you need to let something out, but then just let it go. Realize like a lot of it is in our head. We've worked ourselves up. We let it out, and like, oh, okay, I'm still here. You know, the best day of my life is still today because I'm still here. So spiritual, having some connection, you know, whether it's God, a higher power, or just to yourself, that all of this is worth something. You are worthy, you are worth it, and realizing that we were put here at this time for this exact reason. And so what's really important about having that spiritual connection is just understanding that there's something bigger than us, and we just have to trust. We have to believe that even these things that we're going through aren't necessarily lessons, but they're things that are going to get us to a better place in our life. And I really believe that when we use the word lesson, like I'm going through a hard phase in my life as a lesson, I don't think that's true, because that's like, oh, you're being punished. You aren't. These ailments and things we're experiencing are all so that we can become a better version of ourselves. And then physical, I always talk about that last, because how many of us are like, oh, my stupid knee, my darn shoulder, you know, like as if it's not part of us. And so I think when we talk about it that way, then it becomes so detached from us. Well, our brain, our body, and it's been proven through like even sound, you know, healing, that all of these things are connected, and our brains send signals to it. So if we're talking about it like it's this stupid thing that's hurting us all the time, it's going to continue to do that. So we have to talk about it like, wow, I can't wait to nurture my knee better. Or, you know, like, gosh, you're doing such a good job holding all the weight of the world. I've treated you like garbage for the last, you know, 20 years. I've put you through all this rough moments, but we're going to get better together, you know? And so when we start these healing processes, just having that positive outlook. So I like to start with something like this, because I believe before you start any treatment process, it's really important that this is the foundation. And what I mean by that, you are the foundation. All these other things are just extra. I would love to hear from you, like, what's one thing you could do to take better care of yourself? Exercise? Okay. What do you think when you say exercise you have to do?
Stay active.
Stay active, okay. Well, you look like you stay active, so. And that's always such a hard thing, because we know where we should be active-wise. We hear, you know, we should do 4 to 5 times a week, we should do cardio, that's actually not true. When I tell people to exercise and we discuss exercise, my biggest thing is, do you love what you're doing? When you go exercise, are you actually enjoying it? Because if you're not, you're doing the wrong exercises. So we should do things like resistance training for sure, and weights, but it doesn't need to be something hard. I don't need you going to the gym dreading going to the gym. If your exercise is going outside, perfect. Go outside, but let's add a little bit of resistance training, because obviously muscle is better for us and it's better for our brain, and we'll kind of get into where, you know, certain cells work, but I want you to enjoy it. So this is when we start peptides or we start a new program, starting some of these things is really good at the same time, because now we're training ourselves new habits all at once. Instead of being like, man, should have exercised more. It's like, well, what do you love to do for exercise? So if you could pick your favorite exercise, what would it be? Cardio? Okay. So cardio is great. As long as you're not burning yourself out. So those Orange Theory classes at 5:30 in the morning and you've got to kill yourself, I am like a big believer in not doing that. Only because you are putting your body under a lot of stress when you do that, and then you're making yourself super hungry, and then you're raising your cortisol levels, and then you're like eating all that, and it's like this negative cycle. Now, if you're doing it for mental reasons, that's one thing, and I always suggest a few days a week, but just don't do that kind of thing 5 to 7 days a week. You definitely want to nurture your body. Again, love on her or him and treat her with the respect. So how can I show up better? When I ask this question, it's like, I want to do something hard every day. When we push ourselves every day, it doesn't have to be super hard, like something I absolutely hate doing, but when we push ourselves, our bodies are meant to do that. And there's actually a part in your brain that lives that as we age, it can get smaller if we're not doing things that are harder. And in this day and age, it just gets easier and easier to live, right? We can order Uber Eats. We don't have to cook anymore. We can find anything we want on the internet. We don't have to even sit through a commercial on TV and like wait for our favorite show. Like, it all exists at our fingertips. And that ease is not how humans evolved, right? So I want to find one thing, whether that's like turning the shower on cold for 20 seconds, or maybe I don't really want to do the laundry today, but I'm doing it. Pushing myself a little bit each day, actually, it has been scientifically proven to make us live longer, and it helps our brain function. So this is super important, which obviously as we age, we're worried about our brain. We don't want to be doing it after we're already losing some brain function. We want to be doing it before. And then how can I ask the right questions? So when I go into the doctor's office, just having an open mind, being prepared, ahead of time, knowing that like this person is your advocate, but you guys have to work together. Maybe you know a lot about this, but maybe they know more than us on certain things, and so we're here to listen. We're not here just to think they're trying to sell us something. Obviously, none of us as practitioners go into medicine to just make money, or else we'd be burnt out and tired. We want you to have a better sense of yourself and feel better. So we're here to really give you the best plan possible, and we want you to get there easily. And so that's why it's important that you have the right questions when you come in. Obviously, I'm wellness obsessed. So these are just some questions I like to normally go through, but we kind of went through this. This is me on the left. So this is when I was practicing anesthesia, and I'll tell you, I was married. I really got into medicine right out of undergrad. I always knew I was going to do that, like I said, but I just was like burning myself out without knowing it. I was working out all the time. I was just doing like Orange Theory or F45, and I had my kids, and I was like, wow, everything's great, but like I mentally did not feel like everything was great. I was like, something's wrong. Like I could just leave my life and that would be okay. And at some point as a practitioner, you're like, how could I be patient, like giving my patients the best care possible if I'm in this mental state? Something's going on. Well, I remember going to a doctor similar to VitalX, and I was like, I just need my hormones checked. I want my diagnostic check done. I want to see what's going on. They ran all this stuff, like my vitamin D levels were in the toilet. My cortisol levels were all over the place because it's not just one cortisol. I had no testosterone, and I was like, not sleeping. And she's like, hey, let's look at something called peptides. And I was like, what are peptides? Like, this is back in 2020. So people aren't even talking about Ozempic, hasn't happened yet, any of that stuff. And they put me on a peptide called IGF-1, and it helps stimulate growth hormone. I think I was like 32 at the time, so I'm like, I don't know if I want to quite start testosterone yet. There's all these other things. I want to get to the root of the issue. I literally feel like when they put me on IGF-1, the lights turned on in my brain. It was like the brain fog started disappearing. Like I was waking up. I wasn't having to exercise as hard. My muscles were like starting to get more defined. I obviously was about the same weight as I am here, but like my muscles were just defined, right? Like, and this is over 6 months, but we also did some recovery peptides. I felt like I became such a different mother to even my children. Like, I can't even tell you the type of mom I was here, which is like, I'm burnt out, I'm tired, I love you so much, but I can't give you myself because I'm not even alive. To here, I'm like enjoying, I see their faces, they're smiling at me. I just really feel like my brain was in such a mental place. So anything peptide-wise, I feel like is such an investment outside of a vanity play. It's literally a mental play because Even when it comes to work, I'm showing up better. When it comes to my daily life, I feel like I can sleep. Like, all of these things add up to a beautiful picture of health. And so we hear about cortisol all the time. I love the Taylor Swift, right? Hi, I'm the problem, it's me, right? So it's like when you realize you're the reason you're sick with a cold every month, your face is puffy and your hair is falling out, is because your cortisol levels are too high from long-term stress. And it's also the reason why you have racing thoughts and can't fall asleep at night. So it's a vicious cycle, right? You wake up, you feel like crap, so then you eat like crap, so then you don't sleep well, and then you just play this game all over again. So we need something to get us out of this cycle sometimes. Because when our cells are under stress, instead of in their normal state, we use energy instead of oxygen. I'm sure you guys have heard of, like, maybe remember the Krebs cycle from biology, but when our cells go under stress and make new cells, instead of using oxygen, which is the deep breaths we did, which is how often do we really do that, if we're being honest, we use energy. So now you have no energy to go to the gym. Now you have no energy to want to eat right, and your brain is like, oh, sugar looks good, that's a little pick-me-up, and it's just like a small, short play instead of a long-term option. So what does high cortisol lead to? Well, high cortisol can lead to high blood sugar, digestive systems, issues, poor thyroid health, weight gain, insomnia, and lowered immunity. What a lot of people don't realize is if we just tested your cortisol, we can't tell if you guys have high cortisol from stress or not, because chronically high cortisol levels actually will come down and be low again when we retest. So what we have to do is go off your symptoms. How do you feel? What's going on in my body? And it's not a death sentence. If someone has high cortisol levels, guess what? We can fix that. We can help you. We can give you some tools. And if you get down to the basics of doing that, you can actually do it on your own as well. But sometimes peptides are tools for that. So the path to optimization begins with realignment, and this is how peptides can help. So I love a picture like this because if you think of your body in a homeostasis, we can get off kiltered all the time. And so when people talk about peptides or how long do I have to do programs, well, are you like this? And then we get you here. Okay, let's hang out here. We're fine, but it's okay. Something happens. We move. Someone passes away in our life. We have a stress happen at our job. Whatever it is, it's okay. We can always get you back in realignment, and it's just understanding that our life isn't linear. It's going to go in waves. And so as long as we know that the focus is to get our body in this homeostasis, that's how it functions best. That's how we evolved, and that's where we want to get back to. So I love the question, are peptides new? How many of you guys know what peptides are? Ooh, a lot of you. Okay. So peptides are essentially just short chains of amino acids. So amino acids make up proteins, right? So we all have heard of proteins. When people are like, I need collagen, right? Like collagen produces, we actually shouldn't be giving our body collagen because our body doesn't know what to do with it, right? It's like, I need my car to go, but I give it gasoline, right? I give it what the body needs to make it go. So amino acids are the basics of what makes collagen. So amino acids, if you think about it, when we want to make proteins, when we want to make anything, that's why vitamins are so beneficial. That's why all this stuff is great. So when they were first published in the New England Journal of Medicine, if you see this is 1921. So they are not new. Insulin is a peptide. And so then they were talking about brain peptides here in 1981. So none of this stuff is new. It's just new to us because of the media and because of the way that weight loss kind of has come into play. But by no means are they new, and it's not experimental. What's experimental is in the way we're administering it. Now, how many of you know that FDA medications, about 80 to 90% of them are not used for what they were originally patented for? Yeah. So when you're given an antibiotic, or you're even given a thyroid medicine that's FDA approved, it was not necessarily approved for that exact thing. And so when people are like, oh wow, are these FDA approved, are these not? We don't want to necessarily go off that data. We want to go off how well is it studied, where is it coming from, is it safe, is it effective, and what is the worst thing that could happen, right? Like, if my body took this, what would happen if it doesn't work for me? Like, what are the side effects? So we'll go through all that. So how do they come into play? What are they? Are they only for weight loss and other risks? How many of you knew that there were peptides outside of weight loss peptides? So half of you. Okay, cool. So these are the most common peptides. You've heard of semaglutide and tirzepatide, I'm sure, which is your Ozempic and your Wegovy. These both act on GLP-1, which stands for glucagon-like peptides. So when people are like, I didn't know Ozempic was a peptide, it is. So that's because it's working on something called GLP-1 receptors. Do you guys know where your GLP-1 receptors live? The answer is everywhere in your body. So what's cool about that is we think about it for weight loss because we think about it like, oh, it lives in our brain to tell us we're not hungry, or it lives in our gut, which is our second brain, by the way, to help our body slow down digestive. That's actually not true. It lives in your liver, in your kidneys, in your heart, in your lungs. And why that's important is when we take a GLP-1 and we're only chasing not eating, and that obsession of like, well, when I took it, it did nothing for me. Well, it might have done nothing for your eating habits, but it did something for your inflammation. Because when we can regulate blood sugar, we can actually really allow our body to rest, digest, and heal. So insulin, right, can get released, and that's from when we eat a lot of sugar, which could be even carbs, right, or sugar. Our body doesn't know what to do with it, so it releases something called insulin. When insulin gets released, it has to go somewhere, right? So we want all the sugar to go back into the cells. There's 3 places it can go. It can go in your liver cells, it can go in your muscle cells, which is why when you have a lot of muscle, that's really good. And the third place is your fat cells, which is unlimited, right? The first 2 are limited based on how much you have available. And so what we want to do is not have these huge sugar spikes, because every time that happens, we get a sugar spike because we eat something, and how fast that releases, our body releases all this insulin, and it's like trying to pack it away, it's trying to pack it away. So where does it go? It goes to the fat cells, it goes to the muscle cells, and it goes to liver cells. When it packs it away, what happens is if the insulin spike was super quick, our body overreacts, or when the sugar spike was super, and it releases too much insulin, and then it'll drop our blood sugar, and that's why when you eat something super sugary or super like carbohydrate, you're super hungry about 30 to 60 minutes later, because your body is just going doot, 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 and we don't want that, right? We want this nice flat level, and that's why GLP-1s can be beneficial, because they can help regulate our blood sugar so that we're not having these cravings. So that's the basis of how they work. They're both different in how they work, and I'll go through that in a second, but they do help with weight loss. They are just a weekly injectable. GLP-1, when our body reacts to it, it would be minutes or, say an hour at most. When we take an injectable that helps with GLP-1 and mimicking that process, it lasts about a week. Well, that's awesome, because now I don't have to constantly be brain thinking, oh, I shouldn't have eaten that, or now I'm hungry. You're not fighting yourself. You're not putting that energy against yourself to say, oh my gosh, and have that guilt of I shouldn't have eaten all this. They both work by slowing gastric emptying down, and this is where you'll hear of those horror stories like, man, that person paralyzed their stomach. That's usually a dosing problem. It's not the medication. It's usually the provider is not working with you and what works for your stomach. Now, sometimes people will get their hunger back, and I said that's okay. We don't mind that you're hungry. What we want to be happening is we want your body to be taking in this peptide, and we want it to be working to decrease inflammation. This is a marathon, not a sprint, right? We didn't get here overnight. We didn't gain 50 pounds, unless you're pregnant like me, in a short period of time, right? So let's take it slow and make sure your body can maintain this weight loss. Because the only time we're really gonna lose the muscle that you're worried about losing on GLP-1s is when your body's not getting the nutrients it needs. So when it can get the nutrients, it's not gonna pull from your muscle, because it feels okay. This is why people can go on 5-day fast and they don't lose their muscle. They don't wither away, right? Because they're still providing nutrients and vitamins, which is where things like IVs help when you take these. Other peptides at the same time that promote muscle. So what we like to do is use this as one of the tools, but then you have a plethora of other tools at the same time. So I love when people ask what is the biggest difference between semaglutide and tirzepatide. This is such a good visual for it. GLP-1s, they're both GLP-1s, okay? So you'll see how they work in all parts of our bodies. They're going to increase satiety, like how hungry you feel, help decrease food intake, nausea, and body weight. Now, the nausea is just because when you're kind of spiking your blood sugar the way you are, and your body is like saying, let's regulate it, that's what's causing the nausea. So it's a side effect, but it's also just the GLP-1 part of that process that's doing it. It's going to slow down our gastric emptying, and it helps with our liver, obviously, which we know is very important because this is how we get rid of all of our toxins. So as much as we want to protect this in the best way possible, because this is what actually helps our bodies behave in the way it does. Now, when you have tirzepatide, you're adding a second benefit to it. I don't look at it like it's twice as strong, because it's not. The magic is really in the GLP-1, right? But this added GIP benefit really gives your body a nice shakeup. So if you're someone looking to lose, let's say 50 pounds, or you want to be on this long term, I always love starting people out on semaglutide, and then, hey, 6 months down the road, we have a place to go. We have somewhere that's new and different. Some people are so terrified of the nausea that they want to start here because this does have less nausea. Not because GLP-1s don't provide nausea, it's just that this helps decrease it because of the central nervous system aspect to it. So any questions on this slide, or really the difference between the two?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So do you take them at the same time, or you would start somebody on one and then move them to the other?
Exactly. One at a time. And that's a great question to lead into that. When we're on peptides, I always look at it like you're renovating a kitchen. And I would never be like, hey, let's do the floors and also do the floors and get a rug. I'd be like, let's do the floors and the counters and the appliances, right? We want to do multiple processes in your body that affect different receptors. So great question.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Is this only for the GLP-1?
Yeah, those are just for the GLP-1s.
Not for all the peptides?
No, yeah, that's just the GLP-1s.
So basically, if you want to lose weight, that's supposed to be.
Not even lose weight. There's so many benefits, as you can see. It affects so much of your brain and brain health, and type 3 diabetes is actually Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, right? We talk about that. It's the slowing of the processes in the brain, because when we have sugar in our brain and it's not being regulated, it can really slow down how well those receptors work. And I tell people that all the time. If they're starting to lose their brain health, one of the first things we should do is how well is their sugar controlled. And so it doesn't have to be just for that, but you would look at a much smaller dose, a microdose, and there's a lot of benefits on microdosing, and I can go over it. I don't think I have that on these slides, but happy to talk to people. My mom, for instance, is a Parkinson's patient, and I have her on semaglutide and tirzepatide, or either one, because I know that it can help her brain health.
One more question.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want to lose weight. Should I be taking or try to take something like this in terms of the stomach and the liver?
Absolutely, and there's a microdose. Instead of the vial lasting you, say, 10 weeks, there's a way that you can go on a program and you would take half of what the FDA standard as like an obesity type 2 diabetic dose. You would take half of that, or even just a little bit less. You would still take it weekly because we want to keep that regulation, but absolutely it's always an option. And I tell people, I'm like, look, if you can do that long term, like I'd much rather pay for that over 6 months and have the benefits of it. So absolutely, yes.
So if someone has type 2 diabetes
Mm-hmm.
and they're on medication from their endocrinologist, how do they start taking a peptide if they're still on medication?
Yeah, so that would be a good question. So if they come here, they just talk about what medication they're on, and maybe they need clearance from their endocrinologist, but it's something that we can work with because the providers here are very versed in that. We do have a lot of type 2 diabetics here, and we just need to know the dosing, what they're on, if they're on insulin or just metformin, and all of those things. So it absolutely is something we can work with. What's interesting is people be like, I'm pre-diabetic, or I'm the lab work that we see on paper, they won't show you when you're just inside that normal range what that means. That's high risk. And there's this huge period of time that we know people are trending in the wrong way, but your general primary care might not be giving you clues on that. They're not treating it because maybe insurance doesn't cover it, or they're not taking that time, like you said earlier, they're just looking at their screen. And you want to talk to a provider that's like, yes, you're within range, but this is the range of a normal population. this isn't the range of where we should be to be healthy, because we know that we are losing life expectancy where we're at right now. We're at the highest point of chronic diseases. We are literally walking around just using pharmaceuticals instead of some of these natural health benefits that can really get us into a much better range instead of being on the high end of normal or the low end of normal, right? Like we want to be closer to the middle of the pack where we say this is a much better place to be than close to these, right? So it's like, oh, well, I'm not quite a diabetic yet. That just means you don't qualify for the medicine that the doctor's going to give you. It's not necessarily a good thing. Yes.
What about fasting?
I love fasting.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I'm glad. I'm reading a book about fasting.
Big believer. For women who are still menstruating, I think it's important that you cycle your fast. But
cycle it?
Well, if you're still menstruating, if women are still having a cycle.
I'm old.
I know, but I do like to say that's one of the things that that's one of the only reasons we might wait. But fasting can be hugely beneficial for brain health. There's actually a place over in California, or I think it's in Bali, and actually they'll do 21-day fast for people to heal them from cancer. If we can starve the cells in our body that are causing harsh things, then that's one of the things that can be really beneficial. So I love implementing fasting with a peptide because you're giving your body a nice break.
Well, what exactly is a peptide?
So
is it
peptide,
something you take?
It's an injectable. It's just a short chain, like I said, of amino acids, but that's the best way it's administered. And so that's a great question. Why are they injectables? So when we take anything orally, like vitamins, a lot of times they're absorbed, but we have to worry about what's going on in our gut and how well that is expressed.
So you get an injection.
Yes. So it's a baby injection. And if we didn't eat right, if we didn't sleep well the night before, if we ate something really heavy, our body might not take on that vitamin in the way we want it to when it's orally absorbed.
Right.
And it also can't get through the gut lining. There's a reason for that, right? So we want the injectable to go straight through the source, but in a very safe way. It's not like I'm putting it straight into the bloodstream in an IV, right? So you can self-administer it. You can take them daily. And they work, like I said, they work much faster. Vitamin D injectables are one of my favorites because you could take an oral vitamin D supplement, which I think is great for maintenance or great for, getting your levels up there slower. But if we did an injectable vitamin D, for instance, you can get there a little faster and you can feel the benefits and then maintain with an oral supplement.
Do you usually take it in the stomach?
The vitamin D, yeah. So any of the injections can go in your stomach, your thigh, your glute, or your upper arm, and those are like the soft places for them. Glute tends to be the hardest to kind of get to on your own, but if someone else is giving it to you, it's easy. So your stomach, you just squeeze the belly and pop it right in, and you don't even feel it. People are like, that's it? Every time they're like, that's it? It's crazy because you think it's scary until you do it, and you're like, oh wow, I'd rather do that than swallow 20 pills a day, to be honest.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
So how long, because you don't do this for a lifetime, right? So what's a normal course? Is it like 6 months or 12 months? Or?
Yeah, great question. It just, I hate answering that way. It just depends. But what are your goals and where do you want to be? So we like to do check-ins every 8 to 12 weeks. And most of the programs are about in 12-week increments, 8-week increments. So we just do a check-in. How you feeling? What progress are we getting? Should we change it up? You do want to give your receptors a little bit of break sometimes. So we'll start you on a peptide. We'll give you about 10 weeks worth, and then we'll say, okay, should we switch peptides at this point? Because we can get, do a new peptide but have a different method of action in it to get the same benefit.
I have one more question.
Yes, it's okay.
So I have had someone tell me that when you stop, like if you're using for weight loss, that when you stop, the weight comes back.
Yes, very common for people to assume that. So it just depends on what they do. So if I stop going to the gym, am I going to lose my muscle?
Yeah.
Potentially. Yes. So we need to keep up the habits that allowed us to lose the weight. So the GLP-1 we look at like a tool. Yeah, it's a tool that helped us eat less. But if we just go back to eating the stuff we were eating before, then of course we're going to gain the weight back, right? If we stop going to the gym. So if we look at it like a lifestyle change, then we can maintain it much easier. But if people are just using
It's not an effect of the medication, it's your habits.
both, exactly. And what I like about dosing the GLP-1s a little lower in the beginning, where you're not losing the weight super fast, is that you have to pay attention to what you're eating. You have to exercise on top of it. If you're dosing these really high doses to make yourself just not eat all day, well, now when I go to eat, I can just eat pizza. I can have Chick-fil-A. I can drink like a fish, which is not going to help, right? Because I'm just drinking my calories and I'm only doing it once a day because I'm not hungry. Well, if we have to still eat a little bit, then our body can learn, okay, now I'm eating nutritious foods. I'm eating whole foods. I'm eating much healthier, and big believer in whole foods. Not focused as much on calories, but our bodies crave fats and proteins because it knows what to do with it. It does not know what to do with the carbohydrate. It's like putting something in it that it has no idea what to do, and that's why you'll see it sitting on the belly fat. And that's what sugar does as well, right? Our body doesn't know what to do with it, and it literally, it tries to get rid of it, but we've kind of gone over that part too. So what is growth hormone? How many of you guys have heard of growth hormone? Yeah. So what do you guys know about it?
It's amazing.
It's amazing. I do love that answer. Yes, it is. What else?
It's expensive.
It's expensive. Okay, yeah. But it's free inside of us. Did you guys know that? It just goes down as we get older, right? But I always use the example of like why my kids, literally like my 9-year-old and 6-year-old run around all day. I'm like, aren't you tired? Right? You look at them and you're like, aren't you guys exhausted? I'm tired. Yeah, literally. But it's because their growth level hormones are so much higher than ours. So as we age, our growth hormone level decreases. Growth hormone goes beyond energy. It's a hormone made by something in our brain called the pituitary gland. And it works on all kinds of things. It helps burn fat, helps burn muscle, it keeps our bones strong, it helps us feel better, energize, right? It's why I remember being 17 years old and I could literally go to school, go to track, come home, do my homework, and I could fall asleep on the floor, drooling, and wake up and be like, I'm fine. Yeah, everything's great, And now if that happened, I'd probably need 3 to 5 days to recover. So I think growth hormone does so many things in our body. So people get scared of growth hormone though, because they're like, is it gonna cause cancer? Decreasing our growth hormone and all of these processes coming out of whack, right? Fat, losing muscle, bone health going down is what causes cancer. Eating garbage food, putting things in our body that doesn't need to be there is what causes cancer. Increasing your growth hormone levels is just getting you back to where you were when you were younger, right? Less likely to have cancer, less likely all those things. So why is it important? Well, if it's too high or too low, it can cause health problems like weak bones, low energy, difficulty managing weight. It also affects hormones, so testosterone, all these things, right? We want to keep our growth hormone levels high. Well, how can we do it without directly taking growth hormone? I'm sure if you've ever heard, you can source growth hormone. It's available for especially kids that are having trouble advancing and getting the health they need. But it's very expensive, almost like those EpiPens, right? You see the EpiPen and you're like, why is this $2,000? And does my insurance even cover it? Well, there's other ways that we can get growth hormone, so we're gonna go into that. There's something called growth hormone releasing hormone. So that's what we want. We want the precursor to the growth hormone because now we're stimulating a natural process in our body to release the growth hormone. So one of the most basic ones, I call it the OG of peptides, is called semaglutide. Semaglutide is a synthetic peptide that stimulates the release of the growth hormone from our pituitary gland. So I'm not giving you growth hormone. I'm giving you something that tells your body to release what you've already made. So how could we give you too much? Can we? Probably not, right? Because your body is the one releasing the growth hormone. So I'm not going to give you anything that's going to make your body create all this chaos. I'm just helping your body behave as if it's in a vacuum. It got a great night's sleep. I'm younger. I'm feeling good. And it's going to help it release so that I can get back to where my natural GH level should be. So this kind of goes over what is it does it do, the benefits. I'm going to notice some energy and vitality. I'm going to notice better sleep, lean muscle, enhanced fat loss. So these are, I really call this overall wellness. This is what I mean when I talk about a picture of health, right? So when people are like, well, what does it do? I'm like, a lot of things, but it's not going to do one thing in particular. Peptides are polypeptides, they work in multiple ways. And so this is best for anyone looking for just some anti-aging or longevity support. This is one of the peptides that I took. So IGF-1 works in a similar way, and it's why the lights felt like they turned on for me. I didn't need anything super crazy. I didn't need like any weight loss. I just needed my body to kind of get out of that reset and kind of get in that hormonal balance, and that's what this did. CJC is another one. We pair it with something called ipamorelin, and the reason being is we want to increase the length of time in which it releases. Does anyone know when growth hormone is released? The highest levels of it? At nighttime.
I have a question with the previous one though. Since we know about the pituitary gland and suppression and all that, does it work similarly like testosterone does? Like if you take for a long period of time, like it increases your own production, and then if you stop, then you're gonna crash type of stuff?
No.
It's not gonna do that?
No, because I'm not replacing the exact product of it. So with testosterone, my body's like, oh, I'm getting it from another source. I don't need it. Right. What I'm doing is the precursor.
Okay.
So that's why it's a little bit of a hack.
Right. So it doesn't matter how much you take. You
can take it. You can't really. That's why I was saying like it's really hard to. You can take high doses and then my receptors become used to it, and then you need to take that much, right? Like it's kind of like my body gets used to having that much release, and so we like to take breaks or switch up the GHRHs because I want my body to be stimulated by different processes. But by no means will I all of a sudden stop producing growth hormone just because I was taking a precursor to it. So that's why peptides are awesome. They're a little bit, I don't like to use the word safer than hormones because hormones are very safe, but there's a lot less risk benefit associated with it because you are going to get a process and then I feel like, you know what, financially I can't afford this anymore. I'm moving to Africa and I don't have access to injectables and I'm going to be in the middle of the rainforest. No harm, no foul, your body will continue to produce it. You're just not going to get the benefits. So CJC 1295 is often combined with it because we want a long half-life. These types of peptides usually work with our circadian rhythm. So if you think about it, I want to take it nightly. That's why we like to put people on these for 5 days on, 2 days off, because usually Monday through Friday we're on a really good schedule. And we want to do it when you're most likely to release your natural growth hormone. So we'll tell people to take these at night. Now the only problem I'll have is a lot of people forget to take their peptides at night. We take our vitamins and our supplements and we're in a much better routine when we first wake up in the morning, whereas at night we can often forget. So if you have to take it in the morning, it's no harm, no foul, but it is best at nighttime. The thing with CJC 1295 and ipamorelin, I like to tell people it does cause a little bit of flushing. Feels a little weird when you first take it. Your body might be like, whoo, what is that? Make you feel a little red, but it'll go away. That's just the growth hormone getting released. I like doing that because then I know it's working. Wow, my body worked, did something. But it's gonna do the same thing. This is a little bit stronger than your Semorelin. And what I mean by strong is it just works in a different way. And I do think if you're looking for really these benefits here, this is a really good option. Yes?
How long does it take before one starts seeing or feeling the effects of these peptides and hormones?
Great question. So if you're in a really good place to mentally get there and you're noticing them and you're starting the lifestyle changes within just a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, by the time we're about halfway through a 10-week program, people are like, wow, I'm sleeping better. I'm waking up with drool on my pillow. I'm dreaming, and they're like, wow, they might not notice some of the physical effects yet, but mentally feeling much better. I've had people within like 2 days of NAD be like, what's happening? I feel a lot better. So, great question. So how many of you guys have heard of NAD? Yes?
Bob takes it every week.
Yeah? How do you take it, Bob?
A 2 to 4 hour IV.
Okay. Yeah. What's that feel like?
During the IV, there could be a little bit of nausea.
Yeah.
But that's in the first half of the IV. The second half, my body adjusts to it.
Yeah. Good. So NAD is really cool because we can do it in a bunch of different ways. We can take it. There is oral NAD. not a huge fan of the oral NAD supplements unless it's one of the ones that maybe we've vetted or, is like shown to have really high absorption. IV is a great way to get it. And then there's also a sub-Q injection. So if you're comfortable, you can give yourself an injection of NAD. What I love about NAD is it gets down to the process and how cells are made. Does anybody remember mitochondria, the cells? We call it the powerhouse of the cell. I'll never forget my biology nerd self. I think I was 6 or 7 years old. I wanted to do it was like, go make a cell project. And I went home and I was like working with my dad and I was like, okay, I want to do it in a fish tank and I want the fish to be the mitochondria. So literally there's a beta fish swimming around, a little, nucleus, which was like a bouncy ball, but it was the fish. So that's what's working if you think about it that way, you can remember that mitochondria actually are always producing energy, and that's what's really important when we're making new cells. So how can we support NAD? We can use it in injectable, IVs. We can actually take it in the muscle. Now you will feel it. This is also one that when you do take it, you'll feel a little rush. You'll feel it in your muscles. You'll feel it go into the parts of your body. That's good, but it should give you a nice boost of energy, decrease in brain fog. It's actually used in post-addiction therapy because it can detox your bad cells. So this one also ask about, if I have cancer, is this a bad one? Well, do we have a lot of bad cells or good cells? What are we trying to achieve here? We want to optimize your good cells, right? But this isn't going to just target your good cells. This could target your bad cells too. But while we're in a good state of health and we know that you're not fighting off cancer, let's use NAD to optimize those good cells, right? We don't want to be playing backwards. But it really can improve focus, decrease brain fog. I love pairing NAD with any of the other peptides. It's just such a great add-on. So yeah, NAD levels optimal when we're young. As we age, it can really affect our metabolism. Diet and lifestyle changes, some of that stuff we talked about really can aid in the NAD. And then we can see all the benefits, right? It's not just our brain. It's our vasculature, our liver, our muscles, our pancreas, our fatty tissue, and our inflammation. How many of us know that inflammation causes every disease process? Yes. So literally, if we can get to the root of decreasing inflammation, any chronic disease you can think of, we can fix it. And I will tell you, there is nothing worse than obesity for our health because of the stress and inflammation it can put on our body. And that's our brain, our lungs. If you think of even just lying flat, how much extra pressure that's putting on us, how much it's making our heart have to pump. Our heart is a muscle, so it grows. When it grows, it's putting extra stress on it. That's why where coronary artery disease comes from. That's where you would need a stent because we're putting too much pressure on a muscle that's supposed to be smaller, right? So how can we take the pressure off of our organs that were actually created over time to help us, right? That they're beautiful things that we are given that we should try and optimize. So this one's one of my favorite peptides. This is called BPC-157. This is like an OG that you'll hear about. How many of you have heard of BPC-157? Oh, so just a few people. Okay. So I don't know if you guys listen to like Huberman or any of those guys on podcasts, but they call it the Wolverine peptide because it's good for healing, inflammation, decreasing all that. So what we talked about is it's really going to be good for decreasing inflammation. So when people say, what does BPC-157 do? It's a synthetic peptide. It's naturally produced in the stomach. And we actually don't really know why. Everywhere else in our body loves it. But you will notice less joint inflammation. You will notice that you're feeling better. It will increase after surgery, before surgery. It's a great peptide to take because it really can help your body heal faster. And there have been multiple studies on that. But it also can improve gut health. So things like Crohn's, colitis, or BPC-157 can be taken. This actually can be taken in two forms. There is an oral form of BPC-157 as well as an injectable. I like to start people on the injectable and then move to the oral supplement if they're not getting the oral benefits that they want. But why not take it as an injectable, see where we get, and then if we want to add on the oral because we're having some gut issues, then that's a great way to go. Anybody over the age of 35, 30, great peptide. Because not only that, it helps our skin, it helps produce collagen. We'll see benefits in our hair and our nails growth. You can actually, I've seen people inject BPC directly to the area that they want. You don't have to do that, although if you want to do it, all for it. Sometimes we'll do that after an if we got a stem cell injection, which we'll go into later. This is a great peptide to add in addition to it to make sure that you're maintaining those benefits of healing. So this is just showing BPC in the body, how it gets broken down. Once it's in your body, it targets and quickly heals injuries. After absorption, it spreads everywhere. So some people will have really bad nerve pain, and BPC might not do that, but it is going to still do other things. So if you're like, man, my neck is still feeling like, not well, that might be just something different going on. But anything joint tissue related, this is really going to benefit you. TB500 works very similarly. There is a peptide here called the Recovery Blend, which has this blended with BPC. I like when you can combine them and you're getting a synergistic effect. When we work on peptides, like I said, they're polypeptides, meaning they work on multiple processes in the body at the same time. You're going to get 1 + 1 = 5. You're not going to get 1 + 1 = 2, right? And so if we can do that at the same time, then we're going to get an added benefit, and we're going to see a lot of inflammation decrease. So this is one that I would not take by itself, and BPC in the same way. I would combine them to get better benefits.
So just what Heather just talked about is stacking. So there are a lot of times you can stack peptides and take 2-3 different peptides together instead of taking just one.
Yes. And we have some blends where you can get a blend that already has them in the same vial, so that you only have to pull it up out of one syringe. The pharmacy was able to say, these peptides are safely put into the same vial, whereas some peptides we won't do that for because they're working on different processes of the body. It doesn't make sense to stack them. This one is a great one that is paired with a few other ones. So MOTS-C, this one is going to work, the best way I can look at it is also mitochondrial health, and not in the same way NAD works, but it works to enhance metabolic function. So we talked about GLP-1s earlier. The biggest things GLP-1s do is it tells my brain I'm no longer hungry and helps me stay full faster. Now that's going to do a little bit for my metabolism in a way of, the decrease in inflammation, but is it going to do enough to really rev up my metabolism? The answer is no, right? And when we look at eating is in 2 ways. The first part is, why am I eating so much and what am I eating? And the second part is, what does my body do with it after I eat, right? Does it store it as fat or does it use it as energy? This is the second half of the eating process. This is telling my body, don't store it as fat, use it as energy. So what I like to do is if you're on a GLP-1 and you really want to lose weight, you should pair it with a peptide like this that is going to increase my metabolism. You also, like I said, could use NAD, but this is such a good peptide because now you're working on the first half of the eating process with the second half, and I'm really revving up those things to help me lose weight. I also like it for energy, and this is just the science version of it, but you're going to see some improved bone health, improved muscle metabolism, and normal blood sugar levels. So it's going to also help regulate all of that. SS31, this is one of my favorites. It's very similar to MOTS-C, and I know they're like really odd names, so we don't expect you guys to remember this. Be like, I want the metabolism one. I want the energy one. We will know what you're talking about because these names are crazy, and I understand that, but it's cool, and that's not your job. So just remember, this does mitochondrial health. I look at this like a boosting peptide. Anybody that wants to accelerate their results, SS31 is going to be your go-to. Any peptide I'm taking, pair with SS31, you will see results faster. It is a little bit more expensive peptide, but what I'm telling you, it is one of the best ones in the way it works and the way it functions and what I see for people. They get really good results from this.
Is this one of the ones that's used as a cocktail?
A cocktail in the
Mixing of the peptides?
this one I would not. Okay. This one would be by itself. Copper is actually in one of the ones that's blended, the TB-BPC recovery peptide, because copper can help with tissue regulation. So now again, we're working on tissue regulation, we're working on decreasing inflammation. You'll see that this one works really well with the BPC and the TB benefits. People have heard about this a lot for hair. They're like, especially men that are losing hair, you can actually inject directly sub-Q into that area for hair restoration. But copper can be used also as a face cream if you're having breakouts. People see huge skin benefits from copper. So it's a really good one to add if you're like, I really want that fountain of youth. This is a really good peptide, or to do that recovery blend in general.
Is it gonna work for you?
Huh?
Is it gonna work for you?
Yeah, I know. We need a lot of copper for you. That's okay. You look great, bald. But the important part with hair loss is actually getting ahead of it and not waiting till the last minute. So that is something I like to talk to people about too. They're already starting to see that bald spots. It's going to be hard. We want to do it when you're first starting to notice that hair loss. I think it's super important to tackle it, and especially for women. We don't talk about it, but it happens. And so what I love about peptides is when I was practicing anesthesia, it was very different. I never got to like see them again, right? And that was like kind of sad as a practitioner. And what I love about peptides is you guys like love them. So you start a program, you guys feel good, you tell your friends, you're like, wow, this is the first time in years I feel a lot better. So this is my favorite part, and I was just, sharing, like it could be a girl going to, I had a mom last year text me that she went to the Taylor Swift concert with her daughter, and she sent a picture of herself, and she's like, I normally hate pictures, but I feel so beautiful, I feel so confident, and that is everything. Because it's all about how you get to show up in your own life. We're talking about all these health benefits, but at the root of all of this, it's how you behave as a human for your family, for your friends, because that's how we make a change in the world. And you being confident is the root of what we want. And like I said, it's not just a look, it's how you feel. It's like, is that brain fog less? Because we are not meant to carry this much brain fog and stress around. You're meant to feel good and look good too, but it's really all about waking up every day with that gratitude and just being happy in our skin. This is the peptide menu that we have here. So there's a bunch of different ones. We'll show you a picture of one later, but what we like to do is walk you through a wellness quiz. So where are you at? That's what you guys took when you came here. We'll do a consultation. We'll make sure you get quality product. You can find peptides off the internet. They are not going to say they're for human consumption. And I'm not saying that those are all bad, because there are a lot of peptides still being researched, but you do want them to come from an FDA-approved lab. Now, not all the peptides are going to be FDA-approved, but you want the process in which they're made to be regulated. And that's what we make sure we do. We make sure that these peptides come from a secure source so that we know you're not getting any extra metal or impurities injected into your body. That's the last thing you need. So yes, they're going to be a little bit more expensive off the internet, but you're getting them from a quality source. Yes, ma'am.
So they're only injectable.
So there are some peptides that are oral, but most of them, because of the instability of how a peptide has to be processed, they are injectable. But they are a baby injectable that you can actually give to yourself. So we'll show you, it's a little Botox needle. You don't even feel it. And if you want to come in for the first few treatments yourself, and we can show you how to do it, and you can make sure, we're totally good for that, but we need to, you'll see, I have about half the people be like, there's no way I could take an injectable, and then they do it once and they're like, oh yeah, I did it. There's a few people that like, it terrifies them, and then they do it and they're like, oh, that's not bad. But yes, most of them are injectable. Yes.
So you had mentioned about the safety and regulation. So I'm a fan of the science. You know
Yes.
that. It's just like the concern of like how it's manufactured and where it's
Yes.
coming from. Like what? How do we know it's effective? Like, do they do batch testing? And,
Yes.
Okay.
So all the peptides we get are batch tested and all regulated in a pharmacy that has to have, the FDA could show up at any time. And I don't know if you guys know this, but if you were to ever show up at an FDA pharmacy, they would have 6 months to get their stuff together. But any of these pharmacies we're sourcing from, that are these small compound pharmacies, they could show up at any time and audit and pull, and we have all the records that you would need to prove that these are coming from a safe source. Now that means that we pay more price for that because they're batch tested. Some of these tests alone cost $20,000, to test a certain peptide. Right, and so that's why the prices are going to be a little bit more elevated than on the internet that say not for human consumption. But these all come with purity tested. Now anything that says anything over 95%, I don't trust, because when it says 99% purity, it is not. the FDA labs are even, 95%. Right, that's like the standard. When you see the little 100% on a restaurant, you're like, are you really? No. But you know, you want to make sure that it's a quality product. So we've done all that homework for you, and that's why we have the stamp we have.